What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and I know that I just released a full Mortal Kombat 1 review earlier this week, but we actually got two major video game releases this week, the other being Lies of P. Of course, since I'm doing this video, I've played it and I want to talk about it. So without further ado, let's rock. So a couple of quick disclaimers before we get started. This is my first impressions of Lies of P. I am not completely through the game yet. I'm about 8 to 10 hours into it. I say 8 to 10 because I'm not quite sure exactly how far I am in the actual game, because it is a Soulsborne game. Those games are very punishing. There's a lot of trial and error. So I played it for 8 to 10-ish hours, but I'm not quite sure how far I'm in the actual game I am, because there is a lot of kind of backtracking and trial and error. So this won't be a full-fledged review. Speaking of full-fledged reviews, I did do one of those for Mortal Kombat 1 earlier this week, and as you might imagine, it's just me here at this channel. So those reviews take me a while because I do everything. So they take a lot of time outside of just playing the game for the review. So because I already did one of those videos and I have a busy schedule the rest of the week, I'm not gonna be able to put that much effort into this video. But because Lies of P has been a fun experience so far and it's getting a lot of traction, I did want to kind of get my thoughts out there. So this is going to be kind of a bare bones video. I didn't prep anything for the review part of this video. It's just going to be very off the cuff, very free form. I'm just going to kind of start talking and see where I go. So hopefully it goes well. I haven't recorded that part of the video, so I guess we're going to find out together. Lies of P was released on September 19th. It was developed by Round 8 Studio and published by NeoWiz Games, and it was released on all platforms except for the Switch. And unlike Mortal Kombat 1 that was released on all platforms except for Xbox One and PlayStation 4, Lies of P, when I say everything except for the Switch, I also include PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. I played this day one Game Pass on my new Series S. So I saw the trailer for Lies of P like everybody else, and I know a lot of people were hyped after the trailer. It's like, oh man, a Soulsborne where you play as Pinocchio, let's go. Honestly, I'm happy for them for being hyped for a video game. I get hyped for games all the time, but I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I give a shit about Pinocchio. I love Soulsborne games. I'm not an expert at them by any means. I'm not very good. I honestly play more than I actually beat. Majority of the Soulsborne games that I've played, I've not actually beaten, so I'm not an expert by any means, but I just don't care about Pinocchio. I think it's kind of gimmicky that they made a Soulsborne game with Pinocchio, but if it draws people in, it draws people in. I'm not a fan of Pinocchio. It was one of my least favorite of the Disney animated movies growing up. The live action adaptation was absolute dog shit. I will say that the most recent stop motion Guillermo del Toro movie was pretty good, but I'm a big fan of stop motion animation, and I also love Guillermo del Toro, so I had an agenda there for sure. I had a reason to love that movie despite it being about Pinocchio, but I again don't really care that much about Pinocchio. But I do like me a good Soulsborne game, so I was happy to play it, especially with it being day one Game Pass. And I do think that as gaming has become more and more accepted as a more than just niche hobby, and because more and more people are playing games and more people are experiencing different subgenres of gaming like Soulsborne games, I think that we've gotten more of these types of games recently, and it feels like there's two different types of Soulsborne light type of games. One being kind of like Hellblade or even Jedi Fallen Order, where they take elements of Dark Souls and Bloodborne and they bring them to their game, but it's not trying to be a Soulsborne game. Like Hellblade has a very similar combat style to a Dark Souls or a Demon Souls, but it's more of a psychological character study. The combat's not as difficult. And then of course, Fallen Order Jedi Survivor, they're Star Wars games. They have the meditation spots, they have a lot of the parrying and the dodging and those aspects, but they're not as difficult as Soulsborne games are. And then on the flip side of that, you kind of have games that really want to be Soulsborne games, like Mortal Shell comes to mind when I think about that. I didn't particularly like that game. It had nothing to do with the fact that it was trying to be a Soulsborne game. It's just, I didn't think that the game was very good. I know that it has some fans, but I just wasn't one of them. And I definitely would put Lies of P in the category with Mortal Shell. Lies of P really wants to be a Soulsborne game, and I think for the most part, it's pretty effective. Again, don't particularly care that much about the Pinocchio stuff. I was never going to get into that stuff. I haven't really gotten invested in the story. I will say, as far as Soulsborne games are concerned, the story is much more explicit than a Demon Souls. Like, you really kind of have to dig into those games to understand the lore and the story and what's going on. A lot of times you're just trying to concentrate all your energy on just surviving, and so you don't really pick up on a lot of the story until you play it multiple times. Lies of P is much more explicit with its story. You understand a lot of what's going on more. It definitely does the Soulsborne thing when you first start, where it just drops you in, but it gives you a lot more explicit clues about what's going on. I do like that it has more of a traditional tutorial. It still kind of just drops you in and doesn't really explain much, but it does kind of hold your hand a little bit more than your traditional Soulsborne. It does feel like it's kind of more of a slow burn. It definitely warms you up a little bit. It doesn't throw you into the fire immediately. I was surprised that the tutorial boss was pretty easy, and it wasn't just designed to kill you. That's a very tropey thing with Soulsborne games, is typically the tutorial boss is literally designed to kill you, and it's very, very difficult to not get killed by the boss. It's kind of crucial to the story that you get killed by that first boss. The first boss on Lies of P was kind of embarrassing. It was really easy. So again, I'm not an expert at these games. I don't want to come off as one, but I kind of know what I'm doing. I've played enough of these games to kind of know what I'm doing. So I didn't really have a whole lot of issues, especially with that first boss. It does get tricky. You do hit a wall. I did kind of slow play this game a little bit today as I was playing it. I'd play it for like an hour or two, kind of hit one of those walls, kind of start to feel myself get frustrated, and then I went and got a snack, or I walked the dogs or whatever, and then I came back. So that's why I say I'm about 8 to 10 hours, because I probably actually spent most of today playing this game, but it was kind of off and on. And even though I didn't particularly like the story, I did think the environments were pretty cool. You start off in this like post-industrial revolution type of city, and I thought the environments looked really cool. I will say some of the textures were a little flat. It's made by a smaller, lesser known studio, so that kind of makes sense. They don't have the budget of From Software, so I understand that. It was a little bit disappointing, but it wasn't anything that was gonna break my immersion or anything. I do think the environments and the costumes and the enemy types looked really cool. And while I don't think that it necessarily has the depth that you would expect from a From Software Soulsborne game, it does have a surprising amount of depth. I like the fact that you can have that mechanical arm and you can get different types of arms, and I think that's really cool. I haven't unlocked too many of them, but it seems like it's going to be a core mechanic of the game moving forward, and I'm very happy with that. It kind of gives it its own feel to it. I was really enjoying the sort of like grapple gun arm. I thought that was really cool early on in the game. I've kind of moved past it at this point in the game, but early on when you get that, I had a lot of fun with that. I also like that there's a decent amount of weapon customization. I do think that that's going to add to some replay value. I don't know if I'll end up replaying this game or not, but I do think that it's going to lead to a lot of unique experiences because you're constantly customizing your weapons and there's a bunch of different options. I think that that's going to end up being it's going to lead to a lot of people playing this game very differently. And then of course there's the different builds. They're not super complex. You have your balance build, you have your strength build, and you have your dexterity build. So there's not a ton of depth there, but the depth is going to come with the weapon customization. You can kind of craft a bunch of different types of weapons using different pieces. And I think that's going to lead again to a lot of people having very different experiences. And I think that's cool. The more depth, the better. I will say that it's very similar to a Soulsborne game, especially if you played like a Demon Souls or even most recently Elden Ring. You're going to pick up on the character stats, the buffs, all of that stuff. You're going to pick up on all of that stuff. Like, you're not going to have a problem with that at all. And then of course there's the campfires or the sites of grace, whatever you want to call them. They are, I think, called stargazers in this particular game in Lies of P, but it's very similar. You have your souls. I can't remember, it's like Argo or something like that, where if you die, you drop them and you have to go back to them to retrieve them. And if you die again before you get back there, you lose them. So it's very similar. Like I said, if you played Elden Ring or you've played Demon Souls or Dark Souls, you're gonna get it. There are some elements that they took in from other Soulsborne games like Bloodborne. There's this really cool mechanic where if you don't do a perfect guard, but you do block it, it kind of takes momentarily, it takes away some of your health. And then if you attack right away, you get that health back. And I think it is a really fun way for the game to encourage you to be aggressive and not be the guy that just dodges and then strikes and then dodges and strikes and dodges and strikes. I think that the game, that's a cool way to encourage you to be aggressive. So I definitely appreciate that. I do think that for the most part, Lies of P isn't a perfect game, but it's probably the game that I have played that isn't a From Software game that is closest to being a Soulsborne game. I think that, again, I'm not an expert by any means into these games, but I think that if you're listening to this and you are an expert and you've played these games and you've replayed them, and maybe you have a significant other that you really want to get into these games, or a friend or whoever, I think you might want to start them off with Lies of P. It's a good Soulsborne clone, and I wish I had a better word for it because I feel like that has a negative connotation to it. But it has very similar feel to it. It has very similar mechanics to it, but I don't think it's as difficult. It is difficult. It is a grind. You will hit a wall, but if you just want to teach them and you just want to get them to have the feel of a Soulsborne game before they dive right into Elden Ring or Demon Souls or Dark Souls, I think this is a good one. I've enjoyed my time with it, even though it has pissed me off at times. But as I always say at the end of these videos, those are just my thoughts on Lies of P. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. Of course, I hope that you enjoy all my content and you're willing to smash that like button, as the kids say. It's kind of a free way to tell YouTube that you enjoyed it, but especially with this video, because this is different content than I normally put out, and I'm definitely willing to do more kind of quickie content like this in the future if I know that you guys like it. There are plenty of games that I play like Lies of P that are day one Game Pass games that I just don't have a ton to say about it. But if you enjoy this more like casual, not as much production involved, I can put out more videos like this if you guys like it. So smash that like button, let me know that you enjoyed it. That way I know in the future I should put out more content like this. And if you do enjoy this content in this channel in general, consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, ding that bell. That way you get notified every time I post another video. I try to post weekly gaming related content. This will probably count as my next week video just because I am busy this weekend, so I don't know if I'll have time to record another video. But until next video, take it easy. What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this is my boy Yoshi, aka Kitty Boy, and we were just talking and we agree that since you made it this far in the video, you might as well subscribe. You wouldn't want to disappoint Kitty Boy, would you?